Today's episode is brought to you by Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the show, go to patreon.com/JoshuaVelas and become a $2 backer today and get early access to the new episodes. I'll be leaving a link in the description down below, but for now, on to today's episode. You're listening to the Augment Experience podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Joshua Velas. I'm a student, musician, and a gamer at heart. Join me as I sit down every week to talk about all the latest news in the technology, business, and video game world. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, everybody. Welcome back to the show. My name is Joshua Velas. I am your host as usual. And obviously, welcome back to the show. Today's episode 86 of the show, so you guys still keep listening to this, and I don't know why. But aside from that, we got some house cleaning to do today because, well, there's a lot to talk about. Because, as I mentioned before in last week's episode, that this week is when news is going to start picking up a lot more because now there's more to talk about, and well, yeah, we got a lot to talk about right now. But, aside from that, housekeeping, the show has hit over 1,200 total downloads. So, huge thank you to all you guys for making that possible. In terms of news, obviously, this week we will also be covering the recap of the Samsung event that's going on. Well, at the time I was recording today, but this will come out tomorrow on Wednesday. So, Tuesday on the February 11th is the Samsung Unpacked event. So on Friday we'll be breaking down and recapping the whole shebang because there's a lot to talk about, and so far I have a lot of thoughts on the event, a lot of thoughts on that one. So I'll be generating my thoughts and breaking down what actually happens. But besides that, we do have a topic to talk about today, which is more about leaks, but it's more of a important leak because it only supports my theory and many other theories of how the market is realistically going to be moving forward. Because some people still seem to can't get the message. So hopefully this slaps some reality back into them. And, aside from that, let's pretty much get into it. So we're going to be talking about the leaks that are going on with the current iPhone SE 2 or really iPhone 9. So the same situation we have with the new iPhones, or realistically the same situation we had with the Samsung S20, which we now know is the S20. That we now know what it's actually going to be called, but in this case, it can go either way. I'm more in favor of them calling it the iPhone 9 because we didn't get a 9, so it only makes sense. And as we go into it, you'll understand why. So covering the leaks are because obviously if you guys have been, well, if you listen to me, then you obviously keep up with tech news to begin with. So aside from that, we're going to be covering an article from Tech Radar that basically gives more information of the leaks, and at the same time it kind of, I'd say, gives more detail on how I view the situation because it's very interesting. So going into it. So obviously the article starts off, this is from David Neild. This was posted 2 days ago at the time of recording, so keep that in mind. They obviously talk about how, we've been hearing leaks for the past few months. We heard about launch date and pricing. And so far, based on some of the leaks that we've actually heard, the pricing is going to be around $399 is where this iPhone is going to land. And in terms of design language, it's mainly going to be focused on keeping the old iPhone aesthetic that was, with the iPhone 8. So, granted, I think this is when the iPhone 8 will stop being sold because of this iPhone. Maybe, who knows? They might keep doing it, to be honest. But obviously, in terms of design language, yes, this is going to be very similar to what the iPhone 8 looks like. The only difference, it's going to remain that more traditional form factor. Sure, we're not going to go back to the days of 4-inch smartphones because that's not going to happen. I know some people miss those days, but 4.7 inch is a good, it's a good balance. It's not terrible. Like, it's not massively huge, but it's also, it's not a phablet, basically, like my phone. My phone is 6.67 inches of display. So, some people don't like that, to be honest. But what I don't seem to get is how some people constantly keep thinking that, the only way we can stimulate the smartphone market again is just dumping specs into a phone and just making like these I'd say, ungodly powerful smartphones that we honestly do not need. Or foldable phones, which I still think foldable phones are stupid to begin with. So, yeah, I know a lot of people are going to get mad at me for that. I don't care. That's my opinion. So, but aside from that, this only proves my point, and also John Prosser's point, because you know how John Prosser is, and we all know John, and John is great. But this does support the idea that Apple does not care about selling. I would say they don't really care about giving you the best specs in your phone, which is a good thing because specs are stupid. Like, well, not stupid, because they are important in terms of, you know, what can you do with your phone. But even then, smartphones, you're already very, very capable of doing many things, especially from a smartphone from 2019, so aka last year. You could already edit and render 4K video on your phone that actually competes with, you know, laptops that in that same price range struggle to do that kind of workflow. So the fact that a lot of people seem to think that Apple should only focus on making these spec'd out phones incredibly like beef, just no compromise, or, you know, quote unquote compromise, is ridiculous, because Apple has already clearly proven this is not a hardware game anymore. This is a software game. We're playing software. They did an entire event last year where it was primarily focused on software, where it was just showing off all the new software, and it worked. It got a lot of people, you know, to buy Apple products. They included Apple TV Plus, you know, and the News Plus, which is really great. And then you have all these like other services, because that's what Apple's primarily focusing on, is getting you to buy their services. And what some people don't seem to understand, and this is why I think the iPhone 9 is going to be very important, is because it's going to show that, look, this is an entry point to get people to buy an iPhone. Because in terms of specs, this is going to be a great phone. It's going to have the same processor as the iPhone 11 Pros, because, you know, that's how the SE was. The SE had the specs of the iPhone 6S originally when it came out, so it had the same processor. Obviously not the same amount of RAM. It's probably going to have 3 gigabytes of RAM realistically. It's not going to have the same battery size, but obviously the A13 is already a very potent chip to begin with, so I don't really see I would say I don't see the need. I'm not going to, because I know it sounds super weird to say that, like, I don't see the need, you know? But aside from that, to me, when I think of the iPhone 9, this is a clear sign that Apple just wants you to get their services. And it makes sense, because they have a lot of great services to begin with. And this is a good starting point, because it's what the market needs. The market needs more compromise rather than actually like just dumping specs into something, because, you know, that doesn't work. You know, that doesn't work all the time. You can't just make these spec'd out behemoths and expect people to buy them, because that's unrealistic. It doesn't work, you know. And we'll talk about it soon, eventually, and in terms of the new modern day flagship, which starts at $1,000, which I still think that's incredibly stupid. We really shouldn't have gone that far, but we did, because you guys continue to buy this. And I think it's incredibly telling, and I think it's very concerning that you keep buying this and keep proving the point that we need compromise rather than actual innovation, because right now we're not really getting so much innovation. And I know some people say, well, what about foldable phones, you know? What about them? And I'm like, yes, if you want to pay for half-baked products, then go right ahead, you know, because you're beta testing something. It's the same thing I tell people when they buy Teslas. When you buy a Tesla, you're basically getting a beta product, you know? You're just beta testing the real deal that's going to come down in, 3-5 years is when we'll actually get good, affordable electric cars. And by then, if you were a sucker to buy the older Teslas, you were pretty much a fool, because the hardware is going to be so much better as time goes on. The software will be better. And that's all you're buying into, is you're a beta tester, you know? And for me, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, you know? Like, it's the same thing I tell people about the Dell XPS line. Look, the Dell XPS, yes, they do innovate a little bit, you know, they do change the design a little bit as time goes on, but many things still stay the same. And I think that's what some people don't seem to realize, is that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, I get it. Yes, I agree. Face ID is incredibly reliable, and an amazing thing to have, you know? Like, it's phenomenal. I'm not going to lie. I have it on my iPad Pro, and it's great. It works perfectly fine every single time. No issue. But there's still something, the fact that a lot of people still want an iPhone with Touch ID. Like, when some people, they think of an iPhone, they think of Touch ID. They don't like Face ID. And, you know, I think that's a great idea that Apple is deciding to pander to this market and give a new affordable iPhone to replace the iPhone 8, which I get it. Yes, the iPhone 11 is a more affordable option, but it's still a very expensive phone. It still starts at $700. And some people just don't need that. And realistically, in my opinion, I think for people that have an iPhone 6, iPhone 7, maybe even an iPhone 8, realistically, the iPhone SE is the upgrade for them. That's where, or iPhone 9, SE2, you know, where we can swap over on whichever name you want to use realistically, because neither one is right nor wrong until for now. But I think when we look at it and try to be as objective as we can be, at least, it's meant for them. It's not meant for you people that want the biggest, baddest phone on the planet. No, it's not for you, clearly. Like, Apple has many other options, which, as we've already established, this year is going to be a big year for iPhones, because we're going to have 5 iPhones this year, which is the first time we've had this in a super long time. The fact that we're getting 5 iPhones, the fact that we're going to get the iPhone 9, we're going to get the iPhone, obviously the refresh to the 11, we're going to get another 6.1 inch that's not a 11 or 11 upgrade. We're going to get 5G iPhones, because last year we didn't get it because, you know, due to the whole issue with Intel not being able to come up to standards and everything. But it's going to be very interesting, because this is a big year for Apple. Yes, granted, I still don't believe that dumping smartphones, as many as you can, into the market is a good idea. But I get why Apple is doing this, because they want to have a spring launch and a fall launch. They want to do what Samsung does, where Samsung, they always launch their S line at the beginning of the year, and then they launch the Note at the very end of the year. And obviously they have the budget phones just thrown out in between, you know. OnePlus does the same thing. OnePlus launches their first phone in the summer, and then they launch the second in the fall. That's what they like to do. And, you know, I agree that it didn't make sense for Apple to just do one conference a year, drop phone at the very end of the year, because, you know, that's the stigma that we've already gotten, is that, oh, the iPhone is going to come out at the end of the year, so just wait for the iPhone if you love using iOS and you're not going to use anything else. So the fact that now they're changing up the recipe a little bit is going to be interesting. However, there is a problem here that I want to talk about, because it does correlate with the iPhone 9. And that's the whole thing of, is this thing really going to launch in March? Because the rumor is that we're going to get a March event. That's the rumor right now, is that Apple will have a March event, and the March event is where they will show off the many other products that we'll talk about eventually. If they announce the March event, then we will talk about it, because we already have a good idea what will be shown, but there might be a problem. And this actually isn't a problem with Apple, but more of what's going on outside of the US. And what I'm referring to is the coronavirus in China. That's what I'm referring to in this instance, because, as you guys all know, Apple likes to manufacture a lot of their, when I say a lot, I mean a lot of their stuff in China. However, the coronavirus is causing a lot of issues over there, and it's far more severe than they're currently letting on to believe. So, you know, obviously in my mind, thoughts and prayers go out to all the people being affected, because, you know, this is a very, very serious matter. But this also has some ramifications for tech companies, because many of those companies have a lot of their businesses in China. And because of that, and because of the whole coronavirus going on, they're not able to operate in those facilities because, you know, the virus, they're not allowed to work. So many factories, in terms of actually making a lot of the products we like, are not open. So they actually can't manufacture anything. And that's going to cause a big issue, because if this is an iPhone that's supposed to come out in, say, March or April, and they don't have any mass production going on, this is a problem, you know? This causes an issue. And this actually could even, you know, depending on how this all plays out too, this actually could end up affecting the upcoming Xbox and PlayStation, that we might not get them holiday 2020. But that's a whole different topic for another episode. But this is a very concerning thing because with the whole coronavirus situation going on, yes, they are not able to manufacture in China because, factories are closed because people are not allowed to work because of the virus. And this causes some issues because we were expecting that, yes, this is going to be unveiled in March and probably dropped, probably the day of the event or say early April, say. Or they could just do a surprise launch instead and, go from there. But I highly doubt it, especially because this is a iPhone that hasn't been refreshed in such a long time. Because remember, the last SE came out with the 6S. So it's definitely been a long time since we've seen an SE. So I highly doubt they would do just a surprise launch like what they did with the, with the mini. Well, I can't really say that, because they did it with the Mini 5 and the Air 3, that they were just more surprise launches, even though, yes, they also did the press conference where they showed it off. So it's like, they could do it because they did that last year when they updated the iMacs, and then they updated the iPads, and then they updated the AirPods and made the AirPods Pro. And so it's really, they could do it, but I don't see why they would do it. It makes more sense to get more publicity on it because, I'm saying this now. This is definitely going to be the best-selling iPhone of the year, period. If you notice the trend, cheaper iPhones always tend to be the best sellers because that's who it's targeted for, is the mass audience, not the quote-unquote enthusiast, and obviously, yes, some people, I will still say this, that the fact that we're getting the iPhone 9 this year and we're going to get an iPhone 12, it's going to be very interesting because now we have more options. Like if you want a bigger phone, but, a little bit more features, and you want Face ID, then it's a clear upgrade. You would upgrade to the 12, because the 12 is the jump, because we're talking about, say, if they launch the 12 at the same price point of $699 and they drop the 9 at $399, so you're basically spending an extra $300 for Face ID, a little bit better performance, and maybe, a little bit better performance, better battery life, better display, et cetera, et cetera. And from there, it becomes very interesting in that sense because, in terms of $400 smartphones, I do believe the iPhone 9 is going to compete heavily with all the Android budget options because you're getting clean software, you're getting great power, and it's something that a lot of manufacturers don't realize because, yes, I get it. The Android space has great budget options, great budget, great mid-range options. No one's denying that. But the fact that OnePlus is now no longer really in that budget option or more of lower end mid-range, and now they're more of high mid-range, I'd say realistically flagship at this point because with the OnePlus 7 Pro and then the 7T, et cetera, that it leaves a void open. Now, granted, yes, there is a phone that will be competing with the new iPhone, which would be the Pixel 4a. And, in terms of photography, this is going to be really nice because the $400 space is going to be extremely competitive now because now you're going to have a Pixel and an iPhone at the same price range. So it would just come down to stock Android versus iOS. And, we know the Pixel 4a is going to have an incredible camera. We know it will. As long as they get the specs a little bit, I'd say just give it a little bit more love and better battery life because the Pixel 4a, the 3a and the 3 XL had incredible battery life compared to the 3s. They were so much better. And, it's going to be a very interesting time, to say the least. We're going to be in a very interesting predicament, But I think from there, overall, I think that I'm very excited for the iPhone 9. I think it's definitely going to refresh that a lot of people have been clamoring for because, like I mentioned, a lot of people really miss that one-handed style of using a phone, that you could just one-hand a phone and not have to worry that much, which the iPhone, 4.7 inches is very manageable. It's easily one-handable without any issue. And I know you can one-hand it. I've seen it done multiple times, and a lot of people like doing it. And I think this will be great for people that have been wanting to upgrade an iPhone for a long time, like they're still on their 6S or they're still on their iPhone. If you're anything older than that, then you definitely need to upgrade, my friend. But I think overall, this is going to be a great starting point. for Apple, the fact that they're actually making this compromise and going into a budget option, or I'd say a price range that they haven't been in such a long time. And that's very telling, because that lets the consumers know, and that really lets us know that, hey, this is no longer a hardware game. Apple cares about putting iPhones in anybody's hands. They want you in their ecosystem. They want using their services. So that's why they're making it easy to meet you halfway. And that's why John Prosser keeps saying it over and over again. We do not need innovation in this market right now. What we need is compromise, because, yeah, it's unrealistic to constantly spend thousands of dollars every year on a new phone. It doesn't make sense. It's not realistic, because the mass market does not work that way, and I think that's something that a lot of people need to realize, is that, look, this is, it's crazy. You can't always rely on the high end. You always have to, have something, because that's how the car market works. The car market doesn't only operate on selling high-end luxury vehicles. No, they have budget affordable options that are for everyday use, because they get the job done. It's getting from A to B, and they at least look decent, it's not focused on, cramming as much crap into it as you can. It's more focused on, hey, what is the practicality? Does this do what it needs to do? Because at the end of the day, these are just phones. Your smartphone is literally, you can do many things with your smartphone. Yes, and I acknowledge, because I'm one of those people that promote mobile creation. I think that it makes sense that, hey, with these powerful tools in our hands, these pocket computers basically is what they are. You're able to do so much, but you're not willing to think outside of the box a little bit, that there's many things you can do with all the power. Like my phone, I've already mentioned this, my OnePlus 7 Pro. I'm able to edit and render 4K video on this without any issue. And it would do it much faster than many high-end laptops. And I think it's just something that a lot of people don't seem to realize, And I think when we see how well this new iPhone sells, a lot of people are going to be very, very jaw-dropped in the fact that they were proven wrong again. The market does not need innovation. It needs compromise, because that's how you're going to have a sustainable market. Is you can't constantly rely on the high end. Constantly charging thousands of dollars for phones does not work. There's always a small amount of people that will buy them for that price, but the options that will always sell the most is going to be the budget range. Is more affordable options will always sell better. It's just logical thinking. It's how people, what can I get the best bang for buck? That's the most logical rationale on how consumers actually work. That's how the market actually functions. That's how you have a sustainable market to begin with. But aside from that, that's all I really got for you guys today. I know it's more of we didn't really talk so much about the leaks, because the leaks in general are very straightforward. It's more of what they mean in the grand scheme of things is more important, It's the bigger picture is more important than just focusing on, oh, what's the specs? Oh, what does this look like? No. The bigger picture is that, look, this is going to be a very, very impactful iPhone for Apple. This is going to drastically sell really well. We know this is going to sell incredibly well. Now, there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes, like the whole coronavirus manufacturing issue and, et cetera, et cetera. And there's many other factors we could talk about. But that requires a much more, I'd say, not a detailed discussion. Well, it has to be detailed, because it's not just an Apple problem. It's a problem going on in the industry that it affects a lot of companies. And I think eventually we will talk about it on the show. But for now, that's all I got for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Again, thank you guys so much for coming back and listening and constantly sharing these episodes, because, well, the fact that you guys got me over 1,200 total downloads is incredible. We're already at over 200 plus listeners, and, we just keep growing. That's obviously the good thing. Patreon backers still going strong. So thank you, Patreon backers. We have a lot of stuff going on in the pipeline right now. Obviously, there's plenty of news to go around, because there's just a lot to talk about. And I have, like I said, Friday, we're going to be talking about the Samsung Unpacked event that's happening. And you're going to be recapping. I'm going to be giving my thoughts on many of the things shown off. And I got a lot to talk about, because, yeah, there's a lot to talk about, because it's going to be the very opposite of basically everything I was bashing. Yeah, I'm going to bring it up. Aside from that, again, thank you guys so much for your time. I love you guys to death. please be safe. For anybody that's listening that lives in Lubbock or anything, just be safe. But aside from that, thank you guys so much for your time. I love you guys to death, and I'll see you guys on Friday. So bye, guys. Hey there. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day and listening to today's episode. If you're interested in supporting the show, whether it be financially, clicking the follow button, or just sharing the episode, it all works for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for your time, and I love you guys to death.